Welcome to our webinar on marketplace best practices. Today, we're going to talk about B2B distribution marketplaces, specifically disrupting the chemical industry with ChemDirect. I'm honored to have Grant and Tyler from ChemDirect on. We'll go through some introductions here and talk about the marketplace, the industry during our webinar here today. So our agenda will be some introductions. We'll talk about how marketplaces are disrupting modern commerce, deep dive into ChemDirect, the startup, and how they are using the marketplace business model to disrupt their industry, their new 2.0 solution, some of the results they're seeing, and then we'll open up the floor for questions, Q&A from the audience. So first, let's start off with some introductions. Tyler, would you like to kick us off with your background?
Sure, thanks, Tom. Tyler Ellison, good afternoon, everyone. My background, spent a lot of time in logistics. Most recent in logistics was running a scaled B2B platform, and then ran a specialty chemical manufacturer for about 5 years. And that experience really was the genesis of ChemDirect, and I am currently the CEO and founder of ChemDirect.
Thanks, Tyler. And Grant?
Hi, everyone. I'm Grant Lacey, product manager here at ChemDirect. My background is really at the intersection of business, tech, and design. After graduating school, I started a venture-backed B2B SaaS product that streamlined the wholesale buying and selling process in the apparel industry. Ran that for several years and joined ChemDirect about just a year ago. And since joining, I've been leading the build of the 2.0 site that we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Grant. And I'm CEO of McFadyen Digital, also a co-author of the Marketplace Best Practices book with a team of people at McFadyen Digital. I'll talk a little bit briefly about McFadyen Digital. Just 4 quick things about McFadyen on one slide, then we'll jump into the meat of our session. First off, we do large-scale projects, really enterprise-scale e-commerce and marketplace solutions in the billions or tens of billions of dollars of annual sales, catalogs of millions of SKUs, pretty much every dimension on which you could consider commerce or marketplace is large. We've pushed those thresholds. We're also very experienced doing it. We've been in business over 1/3 of a century. We've served over 10% of the Fortune 500. We've been building e-commerce solutions for almost 1/4 of a century, since the beginning of SSL. And we've got about 15 years of experience building out marketplaces, which is what we view as the next generation of commerce. Third thing is that we're a global company. We have teams in the US, in Brazil, and India, providing onshore, nearshore, and offshore services for a global delivery model. And fourth, we're innovators. So we provide a lot of thought leadership from the 450-page book, Marketplace Best Practices. This webinar is one in the series of Marketplace Best Practices webinars that we're holding. We've published Marketplace Maturity Model, which defines what marketplaces are. We're one of the first members of the MACH Alliance. We'll talk a little bit about in this presentation today. And we've published a lot of other thought leadership. Happy to share that with any of you interested in learning more about marketplace vendors, marketplace enablement, marketplace best practices. So on to the real meat of our presentation here. Tyler, can you tell us a little bit about ChemDirect, please?
Sure. ChemDirect is really the first point, click, and buy marketplace, really purposed for the chemical industry. And so I'll get a little bit more into the genesis of it, but really what we're doing is aligning vetted manufacturers and giving them digital access to global customer bases. So we have over 300,000 SKUs and growing quickly. And our order fulfillment rate, trust is really at the center of our brand promise. These are chemicals that we're selling, and so trust is paramount. So we're very particular around order fulfillment accuracy, SKU and search accuracy, and digitizing the entire process.
Great. And I know we're going to get into some of these details about the solution and the tech stack elements, including 5 of which are MACH Alliance members. So we'll look forward to that in some future slides. So let's talk a little bit about marketplaces in general in modern commerce and how they're transforming the industry. So who runs a marketplace today? Well, 10 out of 10 of the biggest global retailers operate marketplaces. Some of these, like Alibaba do and Amazon, do have a big element, which is B2B. In the US, 9 out of 10 of the biggest online retailers operate marketplaces. And in terms of fast growing startups, the unicorns in the categories of e-commerce and supply chain, 8 out of 10 operate marketplaces. Actually, Fanatics is also building a marketplace, so soon will be 9 out of 10 operate marketplaces, 2 of which are in the B2B space. So Convoy and Flexport are in trucking and distribution, shipping, B2B space. So obviously marketplaces are helping drive some of the biggest companies out there. Let's talk specifically about B2B. So the total spend in B2B is about 4 times that of B2C, about $100 trillion, according to Statistica. And there are lots of different niches in which B2B marketplaces can grab some of that revenue, that total spend. These are not marketplace GMVs. This is the gross merchandise value, GMV, of a lot of different niches. Chemicals is about $250 billion. So and it also applies to a lot of these as well. Building products, agriculture, energy, grocery, foods, use a lot of chemicals as well. So a lot of niches have hundreds of billions of dollars of opportunity for modernization with a marketplace solution. And also investors are investing pretty heavily in these B2B marketplaces, some of which are niche, some of which are a little bit broader, but there's a huge opportunity for both total revenue and investment raising in the B2B marketplace space. You can't talk about e-commerce without a slide about Amazon. Their B2B marketplace grew from 0 to 25 billion in just 5 years. And that's forecasted to be double that, 50 billion roughly in the next 2 years and 80 billion by 2025. So they're, including their B2C, they've also grown to about $500 billion in total e-commerce GMV, gross merchandise value. So the marketplace model obviously works, even in, especially in B2B, where we see these huge growth rates. But what is a marketplace versus e-commerce? Well, that goes back to some fundamentals defined in a book called The Platform Revolution of pipeline business versus platform business. Let's first look at what a pipeline business is. So traditionally in a distribution business model, you have a series of linear sequential steps which have to happen one after the other. You have to first find or source your products from different distributors or manufacturers. You have to negotiate contracts. Sometimes that process of contract negotiation can take a month or two. You have to load those into the ERP system, merchandise those products in your catalog or your website, your e-commerce platform, set a price, which is of course putting some risk into the process, acquire and hold that inventory, both physically and financially holding it, process the orders. This is typically automated in e-commerce, but still a step in the process, and then fulfill those orders to get the cash from the customers to pay for those orders in a B2B distribution model. That also applies to B2C retail as well. Now, a platform, on the other hand, like a marketplace, has a much fewer set of people, typically recruiting sellers, supporting sellers, and then the processing of orders, again, typically automated. But you have standard terms and conditions which apply to all sellers. There may be different commission rates, for example, for different categories, which those can change, but generally the rules of the game are standardized across all the sellers. So when customers order, again, it can be from a reseller that's getting something from a distributor. It can be a reseller that operates, represents multiple distributors. You can have multiple resellers of the same distributor competing against each other for price. You can have manufacturers going in, sometimes manufacturers going in direct. Sometimes it can be manufacturers going through multiple distributors who all have the same price, minimum advertised price or fixed price for that. But it's the core element here is that it's a network effect which grows exponentially instead of linearly like a pipeline business. And you do not need to double your headcount to double your number of products or number of sellers. And what makes it more scalable and more profitable is that the third-party sellers do all that labor of finding products, loading them into the catalog, merchandising them, setting the price, holding inventory, doing fulfillment. All of that is outsourced, which enables a much more scalable organization. So pipeline versus platform, much more scalable, much smaller headcount to hire, and much more profitable. I talked about scalability. So typically when you have an e-commerce system, your level of your costs are linear to your catalog size. So if you double your catalog size, you need twice as many merchandisers to merchandise those products, for example, and twice as many buyers to negotiate contracts on those goods. Versus a marketplace, it's much more scalable exponentially. You don't need to double your headcount in order to double your catalog size. So that's the general background on marketplaces and how they play in the space of commerce. Let's talk about ChemDirect. So Tyler, it's been a pleasure working with you and your team. Can you tell us a little about how ChemDirect came to be?
Absolutely, thanks, Tom. So yeah, ChemDirect, so prior to assuming the role of CEO of a company called Mobile, we were a specialty chemicals manufacturer. I ran a scaled B2B logistics marketplace. So that's sort of a culmination of the thinking as I went into that role at Nova. So what I noticed right away in the chemical industry as a manufacturer was a bunch of issues. One is lack of end market access, and because you don't access the end market directly, you really suffer from knowing why is the customer buying your product, what differentiators does your product have, what companion products, what applications are they using the chemistry for. So a complete lack of customer insight. The next problem was the only way to access that end market was through traditional distribution. So it's sort of like you take this massive fragmented market of the chemical marketplace, which is similar to the logistics market in a lot of respects, and there's this opaque process in the middle that is sort of the entry fee to access that end market. And the issues that comes with is, one is inability to build a brand. Two is the lead time and speed to market is extraordinarily long. And the supply chain steps in that process to the market have multiple touches, multiple steps, which in the world of chemistry is never good. You want to get your chemical to the market as quickly as possible. Third was significant margin arbitrage. So we'd sell a high purity solvent for $1.30 a pound, and by the time it got to retail, it would be $90 to $100 a liter. So 80 to 100% margin. And next is really a lack of bi-directional data. And so you're forecasting, you're unable to have accurate forecasting, which obviously hurt your sales and operating planning because you did not get that consumer demand or any bi-directional data flow. So really that was the catalyst from a manufacturing side. Then on the customer side, what problems we're solving is there's a tremendously large long tail buying community in the chemical world that simply can't access chemicals for a whole host of reasons. The customer acquisition costs are really prohibitive through traditional distribution. And so then when I looked at our peer group of SMB chemical manufacturers, what you find is none of them really have a digital strategy, right? So they're sort of relegated to whatever digital capabilities distribution has, which were minimal. And so the original thesis was how do we create a digital platform that essentially becomes the digital arm for the chemical manufacturers, and on the other side of the problem, have rapid order fulfillment to this incredibly large underserved long tail. That was the original thesis, and what Grant will show, as COVID hit and as our marketplace matured, we're creating a lot of other value streams in areas, frankly, we didn't anticipate. So even larger companies. And Tom, you showed the Amazon slide. Fundamentally, we believe that creating a B2C experience in a B2B marketplace is sort of what Amazon's trained. Like, we don't check our personal buying habits at the workplace door. So people want their products faster. Those habits are ingrained. So how can we create ultimately a B2C experience in a very kind of traditional stoic market?
Great point. And especially as more millennials go into the workforce as B2B buyers, they're expecting that rich B2C buying experience that they've become accustomed to on Amazon or other more modern B2C sites. So a B2B distributor has to provide that equivalent experience to them.
Absolutely.
So Tyler, you joined ChemDirect about a year ago as a product manager. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with 300,000 SKUs from over 70 vendors and on the first version of the marketplace and the transition as a product manager?
Yeah, so when I came into the role, and I'll just since purposes, what we refer to as the older ChemDirect site, we call it ChemDirect 1.0, and what's currently live that we built with McFadyen is 2.0. And when I came into the role at 1.0, what the analogy I really use is as you build a company, especially as you build a marketplace, you want to build a foundation for scale. And what we had with the 1.0 site is exactly what you need for that early stage, kind of pre-seed to seed, finding product market fit. So everything that Tyler talked about on the business front, proving the thesis behind the economics of a marketplace, a B2B e-commerce marketplace in the chemical world. The 1.0 site did that. We had people coming on, purchasing organically, saving hundreds and hundreds of dollars by purchasing directly from the manufacturer. But when you dive into the tech stack, the user experience, we had a large amount of technical debt where for me, the call was, let's take everything that's working here, our e-commerce provider with Adobe Commerce, our great supplier network, the economics of the business, and let's take that to the next level. So it's essentially fill that hole. Let's fill that hole so we can build a foundation. So really, I mean, the transitioning to the 2.0 site, our main focuses were user experience, data transparency with our suppliers. As Tyler mentioned, his experience with Nova, that's incredibly important. Building a very digital focused brand strategy for suppliers, and really data cleanliness as well. So establishing validation procedures and really building a best-in-class tech stack for the marketplace to scale, which we'll talk about more in a little bit.
Great, thanks. And Tyler, anything you'd like to add about how your thought process on planning the 2.0 site? And then perhaps the user experience?
Yeah, I think Grant hit it, but it was really listening to the customer and identifying each of those customer journeys, and then accommodating each one of those unique journeys in the build. And I think Grant and our McFadyen team, hit it out of the park.
Great. Maybe you want to explain some of the customer features?
Yeah, no, I mean, Tyler touched on it a little bit earlier, but really the design strategy that I gave to the McFadyen team that they truly embraced when we were in the early innings of this project is let's build a B2B product, or let's build a product with B2B functionality and a B2C experience. And to what Tyler said, all the stats are pointing to millennials and Gen Z becoming the person in the purchasing decision role in B2B commerce. They have certain user experience expectations. If you look back at the history of marketplaces in the chemical industry, a lot of them fizzled out in the early 2000s. And that, to me, is attributed to a lot of reasons, one of them being what I like to call tech literacy and kind of the adoption of what we're used to in our current, or in our consumer lives. So what we did was, from a user experience standpoint, take those e-commerce standards that have been developed in the 30 years since the advent of the internet and bring that to the chemical world, bring that to the B2B world. So if you look at the PDP page, that's a standard e-commerce layout, whether you're shopping for chemicals or you're shopping for sweaters. It's product imagery on the left, add to cart CTA on the right, and really everything in between there. That's the B2B aspect that fits the chemical industry. So when Tyler's talking about user journeys, we have a very broad spectrum of buyers. We have the small business owner who owns a nail salon, who's traditionally bought their chemicals at Home Depot and has been shut out by distributors. And then we have like the larger companies. We have very sophisticated PhD chemists at major research universities who care about kind of the more product specification stuff that's in technical documentation. And for that, we built that very intuitive product details table. And then since it's B2B, we have bulk pricing as well. So the ability for manufacturers to set pricing tiers and allow buyers to say, okay, if I buy 20, this is my per unit cost, and I can still point, click, and buy. I don't have to get a quote for that product, wait a week, shop it around. I can purchase and get it fulfilled in 3.5 days. On kind of the search results, GLP front, the McFadyen team really knocked it out of the park in terms of how we approach data management. And what we landed on is the experience of searching for a standard product with kind of the grade and the CAS number, and then having all those products listed below so people can shop, compare, and really the main value prop of ChemDirect, which is see the pricing transparency, understand when you're going to receive the product, and purchase right then and there. So we took everything and we wanted that to be front and center. So a big thing for us is time to value. And as soon as you execute a search on ChemDirect or you land on a product details page after searching for something on Google, you're getting that value of knowing when you're getting the product, how much it costs, and getting it as soon as possible by purchasing right then and there. And then on the seller front, that's really where we were taking everything that we heard from our 70 plus supplier network and Tyler's learnings, running a chemical manufacturer, and we applied it to the 2.0 site. So really, I mean, in the general value prop of ChemDirect, we give access to thousands of new buyers. We give them the opportunity to build their brand. We are very transparent with our data, not just that supplier's data, but overall marketplace data. So you can kind of think of it as a Google Trends for the chemical industry, understand what people are searching for, what the demographic data of users on the marketplace are, and also the payout. So, I mean, traditional B2B payment, net 30 days in general terms, and that's fast in most cases. So what we do, we pay our suppliers 3 days upon product delivery. So if you're making sales, you're getting paid right away from us. And really all of this boils down into the supplier storefront, which for us, I mean, you could call it almost a Shopify experience for chemical manufacturers. So like Tyler said, most chemical manufacturers have an e-commerce presence or have a web presence, but they don't have an e-commerce presence. And what this is giving them the ability to drive traffic to essentially a domain within ChemDirect that's branded by them. They can display everything from documentation to supplier accreditations, to tags such as women-owned, minority-owned. That's important for purchasing decisions at larger companies, and then all their product offerings. So when buyers or when suppliers want to direct people to see just their product offering, that's the place to do so. And so far, we've done a really great response from our suppliers. They love the fact that they can build their brand, they can drive traffic to these pages to point, click, and buy just their product offering. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, just to reinforce the insights, I met with one of our manufacturers a few weeks ago, and because of the data and insight and sales that ChemDirect has, they're adjusting their operations because they're seeing demand for product at a drum level. So they're expanding their drum operations, which is sort of my original dream of how do you get that important information back to the manufacturer that actually results in a material change, positive change to their operation. And we're starting to see that. We'll see that more as we scale.
Great. You mentioned some great points there, and it is so important to be attractive to the sellers. Marketplaces are two-sided marketplaces, so you need to attract both your sellers and your buyers. And a lot of suppliers did not like, as Grant mentioned, the exchanges of the early 2000s or .com heyday, or procurement portals that are pretty broad line and generic and more cumbersome for suppliers, especially if they have special requirements for, like in the chemical industry or the payment terms. Great points there about attracting, the seller side of the marketplace, which is can be just as important as attracting buyers in commerce. So let's talk about the technology of the ChemDirect platform. I want to give a little foundation for those that don't know about the MACH Alliance. McFadyen Digital is one of the first members in the MACH Alliance, and we have a solution at ChemDirect. ChemDirect platform is built on 4 products plus McFadyen that are MACH certified organizations. So what does MACH stand for? First, it is microservices based. So really more modern technology of API, which ties in with API first architecture and looking at the extensibility of the platform, cloud native, SaaS, and headless. So this really means composable. In the case of an e-commerce site, it's a composable commerce. We also have composable content and other elements in our stack here. So MACH stands for microservices, API, first, cloud native, and headless. So let's talk about the elements of the ChemDirect platform. I hand it over to you guys to talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, for us, I mean, with the 2.0 side, one of the really guiding lights for us, Tom, was the maturity model that you and your team have put together. And to get, I mean, for where we are, we kind of established we were kind of in that third tier, and we want to get to the fourth and of course the fifth tier. And to do that, we had to build that foundation, kind of like I was talking about, fill in the technical debt, get that fresh start with the 2.0 marketplace, implement our learnings from the 1.0 site. And when we were in the planning phase, the discovery phase of our engagement, it was the McFadyen team really brought this approach and this anatomy of the marketplace to us as a proposed tech stack. And for me, where the advantage lies is being an early stage startup. You want to move as quickly as possible, and you want to have best in breed in these areas that are important. And for us, that's what this accomplished. So like on the search front, trusting that to Algolia, not dedicating several resources to search, letting companies that's their core business handle that. Same with Contentful, really gave us the agility that we needed on the CMS side, especially for testing purposes. Webcool on the supplier front, Cloudinary on the content delivery side. So really for us, it's building that tech stack of best in breed that gives us the agility to scale and continue to grow as a company.
Great. And we have Adobe Commerce Cloud as the heart of the engine, the commerce engine here. You were previously on the old name of it, Magento Commerce 1.0, the platform formerly known as Magento. Can you tell us about your decision to upgrade from Magento 1 to Magento 2 or Adobe Commerce Cloud?
Yeah, and really, I mean, like you said, we were with Magento from the start, and for us, Magento was where we wanted to build our marketplace at the core of the commerce and the execution of it. And for when we were in that discovery phase, I mean, there are other options, but for us, I mean, what the Adobe Commerce team did from the 1.0 to the 2.0, especially on the B2B front, that was the deciding factor for us. So the additions of the B2B modules, especially our approach to how we wanted to structure company accounts, and really treat ChemDirect as a business platform for companies to come on and do procurement of their chemicals. Adobe was definitely the right choice for us. And we've been really thrilled with how that's worked out for us.
Great. We're at McFadyen Digital. We're also very happy with Adobe Commerce, and we've built many marketplaces which have scaled very quickly to hundreds of thousands of SKUs, and it's proven the scalability features, as well as the scalability capability, as well as the B2B features. A little bit of a handful to say there. So there are a few other elements in here that I'd like to just highlight. So View Storefront is a progressive web app, PWA. For those that may not be familiar with PWA, this is a technology where you can operate semi-offline. You can have a fast user experience, much like a native app, but it runs inside the browser. You can actually install it on the home screen of your device. Great new front end. There are other Mock Alliance certified front ends, but we definitely like that as a front end for user experiences. So we can come back to this slide if we have questions from the audience about the technology stack. Let's talk a little bit about the results so far.
Yeah, I would say post 2.0, we experienced and enjoyed the transformation results wise that we hoped for. So traffic has more than doubled. Our GMV post launch in the last 2 months has surpassed what it was the prior 6 months. So we couldn't be happier with the results post 2.0, and are excited to get more manufacturers on the platform and drive value for them as well.
Great. All right, so why don't we jump into some questions? I saw some questions come through. I think Tom Gatos, who's our CMO at McFadyen Digital may moderate the questions for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. And thanks. We've had some great questions actually. And I'm going to start with one that was actually just asked because it's one that I've heard kicked around with this project, and especially with industries, B2B industries like this, where you're kind of busting in and disrupting a little bit. But this question comes from Raphael, and it's, what sort of resistance did you encounter from manufacturers to join ChemDirect, given that many must have a robust distribution network already?
Yeah, that's a great question, and going in, certainly, I view that as a thesis risk. I've been more than pleased with the response, and a lot of it is because of what we've discussed so far, right? So it's not a de facto replacement of distribution; it's a digital enhancement and a channel enhancement for them. So sort of the inarguable truths of the digital age is not just in the horizon; it's upon us. Habits are changed and formed, and people want this optionality and all the benefits to the manufacturer. So they've actually embraced it, and some of the larger ones are kind of thinking through their digital strategy relative to the operating changes that they'd have to alter to accommodate an e-commerce platform. But we've been thrilled and frankly surprised at how the manufacturer community has embraced it.
That's great to hear. Great to hear. Great answer. All right, so we have another one here. This one is for Grant, and it says, Grant, coming into ChemDirect, whereas you mentioned before there are hundreds of thousands of SKUs from dozens of sellers. I think you guys are now firmly over 80. What is the secret to managing something that complex in nature?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think especially dealing in the chemical space, it's one of our biggest challenges, because you want to provide a really rich and robust list of attributes, just given the fact that these chemicals can be used for so many different things and for so many different testing purposes. So for us, that was a big part of the 2.0 build, was working internally to establish those validation rules, an ingestion process when we take in data from suppliers, and to give you a sense of what that's like. I mean, we have one supplier who handed us a spreadsheet of 90,000 products that we had to validate, fix errors on, and then upload onto the site. And what we've done since the launch of the 2.0 site is really get that process down to 1 day or 1 or 2 days to get the products ingested, uploaded onto the site with those correct validation sets. And that's extremely important because of how people search, how people filter for products, and especially how people measure chemicals in the purchasing decision of price per pound and price per liter, price per unit of measurement, et cetera. That's getting that validation right is extremely important. And there was a lot of catch-up work we had to do on it, but it's work that helps you scale. And now we have those rules in place.
Excellent. Thanks for that answer, Grant. We're going to kick it back to Tyler on this one. Tyler, most marketplaces are just launching their first efforts these days, let alone an entire second iteration, which is a great point. What advice would you give to those who are planning their first effort that you wished you knew before you launched version 1.0?
Good question. I don't know if there's anything I wish I knew. I guess my counsel would be really refine and synthesize, the problems and issues you're solving, and ensure that can be done digitally. And so, living as the CEO for nearly 5 years, I spent a lot of time really focused on refining and challenging, my assumptions. So, a digital strategy goes far beyond creating just a catalog or a marketplace. It really has to be strategic. And so I guess that would be my counsel, is really dive in and validate both the value propositions for the supplier community as well as your customer community.
Great answer. Great answer. Thank you. So this next one is for Tom McFadyen. Your firm works with many various technology partners. When advising someone like the ChemDirect team, how do you know what pieces will be the right fit?
Great. Happy to answer that one. Let's bounce back to the architecture slide. So the best fit isn't always the one vendor that's the best vendor. There's usually a sweet spot for each vendor. In fact, we have a report called the Marketplace Sweet Spot Report, where we evaluate over a dozen different marketplace software vendors, and some of them have better spots than others in the industry. And it's not always the most expensive one may not always be the best one. It may be more of a culture fit, it may be more of an integrations fit. Some work really well with Magento, others may work better with other commerce engines. There also are cultural issues to consider. If a company likes to custom build and have all that extensibility built into a highly configurable platform versus someone who prefers to have a low maintenance cloud based platform that's just more a matter of configuration for setting things up. Generally, what you see here is somewhat of a best of breed. Not that every vendor here is the very best in their category, but we pulled together leaders in different areas versus some approaches have combined commerce, OMS, marketplace, and content management all in one stack from one vendor. May not be quite as flexible, may not be the best in breed in any particular category like content management or search, but it can be all packaged together. And in many times it's extensible as well. So Adobe Commerce Cloud, for example, comes with its own search module. But here we chose to integrate with Algolia, which provides a more modern, better search and product recommendation solution. So again, there's really a sweet spot for different products, and it depends on the business requirements and the culture within the company. How much of a custom build versus I just want it out of the box and I'm not going to customize anything on it. And happy if any questions about any of the technology components here, we can certainly dive into that if any questions come up around that.
Thanks for the elaboration, Tom. I think it's well stated and very much in line with why an organization like the Mock Alliance exists, which is to certify that these things are as interoperable as we say, and we've certainly got a strong stack here. So I think we'll do one final question here, and someone asked something that was a little it was a general question about quality, regulatory concerns, and logistics issues, but I'll phrase it like this. What, being a marketplace as opposed to being a traditional distributor in this chemical space, right? Being that, one of the first to really pull this off and obviously pull it off with high success. What is different that you have to consider with a marketplace from, an overall regulatory and logistics concerns? I think that's really the root of this question. So is there anything regulatory that's different that you have to consider? And is there anything logistically that you have to control a little bit tighter?
Sure, Tom. So our quality journey, and as I mentioned before, trust is paramount. So we take our responsibility as a chemical marketplace very seriously. Our quality journey starts with the manufacturers that we partner with and ensuring quality. Like the last thing we want to become is a chemicals flea market. So the chemicals that we have are from vetted, responsible, trusted manufacturers. Secondly, from a regulatory standpoint, we digitized all the certificates of analysis, the SDS sheets, so all the specifications are there. We have tables that address the regulatory issues, and we partner with the manufacturers and make sure that we're well aligned with those as well. And logistics is something, Grant mentioned our average order to fulfillment time is 3.5 days. We're constantly enhancing our logistics issues and have some strategic partnerships that we're going to bring to bear that give more control and visibility through that logistics supply chain. So we're very excited about that, and eventually layering in other services as we get feedback from our customers.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. I mean, from a quality perspective, we made a very conscious product decision not to have any review sections for the same reason Tyler stated. I mean, if you're shopping on ChemDirect, you're getting a quality product from a vetted manufacturer. And then on the regulatory front, we take our since we are a B2B marketplace, we take a very serious approach to vetting of buyers, and that's also a big value prop for our suppliers. So our suppliers will not see any notifications, any contact information from buyers who are not qualified to purchase chemicals. So what we do, buyers need to have commercial shipping addresses, which we validate in real time. They need to present a registered tax ID number. And of course, we validated that as well. If there's any questions, we'll reach out to the buyer and make sure that the supplier is armed with all the information that they need to make the final decision on shipping that chemical to a buyer. So for suppliers, there's very little risk in coming on the ChemDirect. There's really no risk, to be honest. And we take that role very seriously.
So I saw a couple questions come in the chat instead of the Q&A session. I know we're almost at time here. I'll try to answer one. Was how does Webcool compare to Miracle? Miracle is a much more feature-rich SaaS-only platform, and it can handle a lot of different use cases. Webcool, as we used here, may only contain half the capabilities or so of Miracle, depending on how you measure. However, it is also substantially less expensive. So depending on requirements, would you pay 10% to get 50% of the capabilities? It depends on what your requirements are. So Webcool is a on-premise extension to Magento, which is fairly low cost, provides good set of marketplace capabilities. We've launched maybe a dozen or so marketplaces with Webcool. We've also launched about a dozen marketplaces with Miracle, and each has a sweet spot. Miracle may be the best fit in some cases. Webcool may be a good fit in some cases. It really depends on the requirements. Part of our services that we offer are advisory, including tech stack selection, where we'll help our clients identify what are the best tools for commerce, for marketplace, for content, for search, et cetera. So we're happy to have further discussions about that should that come up. And again, the answer is there's really a sweet spot for each vendor, depending on your requirements. And then there was another question in the chat to ChemDirect. How are OEM manufacturers handling the fulfillment piece to serve small order customers, which were likely previously handled via traditional distribution?
Sure. So they have a number of ways to solve that. So one is, first off, the manufacturers control minimum order quantity. So whatever operating capabilities they have, they can put that on the site. Secondly, if there's demand for smaller products that they typically use for distribution, they can now make an informed choice. Do they kind of insource that and put those products on ChemDirect if the demand is there, or they can leverage their distributors to be fulfillment for ChemDirect. So really three options for the OEMs.
Great. How are we doing on time, Tom?
I mean, we have time to take one more question, I believe, if that's okay with you gentlemen. So one more came through that I really liked because it speaks to the supplier side, right? And that's one of the big differentiators, like you said, Tom. It's a two-sided marketplace, so it's all about the supplier community as well. And this question was from Frank saying, is the portal for suppliers also built on Vue.js? And then there's a question about what integrations are offered. I think that's both in terms of catalog sync and in terms of backend. But let's focus this one on what's the seller experience when they're logging in. Like, what capabilities do they have? What can they see? What's that interface experience like for them on the other side?
Yep. Yeah, I can handle that. So to answer the first question, it's not built on Vue.js. It's primarily built on Webcool and Magento. What we've done with the Supplier Portal is really, and that this follows the foundation analogy as well. So within the Supplier Portal, they have the ability to have a real-time dashboard of insights to their products on the marketplace, and we're currently working on a monthly report that we'll share with suppliers as well. But otherwise, they have full product management capabilities, so to manage their catalog, update pricing, adjust to market demand, add more products, both in bulk and one by one, and then also the ability to fulfill orders. So once they receive an order, understand who the buyer is, accept or reject that buyer, and then move to the fulfillment process, which is entering tracking, real-time tracking, and sharing that with the buyer as well, all via the Supplier Portal. So on the supplier front, we're in the very early innings. I'm looking forward to adding a lot more capability there. And to answer the ERP integration question, right now, we don't currently integrate with any supplier ERPs. That's definitely a roadmap item. We've had some supplier interest on that front. For the most part, we manage that through either daily, weekly, or quarterly inventory and product data reports that we can update via a bulk product update.
And I'll just quickly add on to that as we're at time here. The two typical integrations for a marketplace are payment and tax. So tax can be is different than on an e-commerce because the nexus for tax calculation, meaning which states have authority, states, counties, cities have authority for tax collection, depends on the seller's fulfillment location, not on the marketplace operator's location. And when you get into multiple fulfillment centers, multiple ship to addresses, tax can be a bit more complicated. So payment and tax are the two main integrations. Payment to vendors can be integrated. It's not always done in the MVP first launch, but it can be automated into the ERP. The nice thing about not integrating your catalog into ERP is that tends to be a very slow process, and having to load seller products into the ERP can slow down the nimbleness of a marketplace. It's much faster to load them into the marketplace itself than handle the payment to the third-party sellers in an automated manner. So that definitely improves the nimbleness and ability to get products onto your site within a day instead of within a month or two. All right, great. Well, I think we are right at our time, or a couple minutes over our time, actually. I want to especially thank Tyler and Grant for joining us in this webinar to talk about the ChemDirect platform and solution. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. Look forward to.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And keep an eye out for more marketplace best practices webinars in the future. Thank you.